In this video, we're going to have a look to see how you can create your own custom queries that can be used inside the query loop. And here we have the standard container with a query loop. And if I go into the query loop, you'll see that what has been selected is the custom query by search and the search term. And below that, I have some custom code, and I've created the same query just to test that what I have is working correctly. And if I go over to the website, you'll see that that search term delivers the same results. Now, that particular search query is not available in the Bricks query, but it is obviously a standard WP query, and so you can search by any word as a search term and return a set of posts. The other query that we looked at to test then was to look at author in. It's another one that's not available by default through Bricks. So what we've done is we've said like all the authors that are in, and then the author with ID here is number 2, and I'm going to save that. And then what I'm going to do is well, that was to change the manual query. Then I'm going to change the post. So here I'm going to change that now to by author 2, because I know that that's the name that I've given the query to query author number 2. And you'll see now that the posts have been updated. We'll save that. I'm going to head over to the website, and now when I refresh, you'll see that we have the same posts output by the query inside Bricks Builder, as well as the custom query that I've created in the code. So I know now that those custom queries are working. So how does this all fit together? You can basically query by any query available in the WordPress query class. And if you head over to WordPress to the class WP Query under developer resources, you'll see a host of queries that you can access. And down the right hand side, you have this nice bookmark type menu. So you can go to search parameters, which is what we use now for the keyword search. We also looked at the author parameters, where we said author in, and we did the author search. So anything that's available in WP Query now, you can access to create your own custom queries. And how does that all fit together? Well, the good news is that a lot of the hard work has been done. And if you head over to this website, Bricks Labs, you'll see that there's a post written by David Brown adding any custom WP query loop to Bricks Builder query loop. And if you scroll down, you'll see that there's a great detailed explanation of how it all fits together. And of course, there is some code at the end that you can then use to create your own query. So what I've done is we've just copied that code, and we've used that then to create the queries that we want in our custom query. But just to let you know that if you're looking for more information, the filters used to put this all together is the Bricks Query Run filter, also the Bricks Setup Control options, and then also the Bricks Query Loop object. And how they all fit together then, if we go and have a look at that snippet, you'll see the first filter that we access is that we have listed here then is the control options. And the control options refer to the information that you'll see here in this drop down. And you'll see we have author 1, author 2, and the search. And if I have a look here in my snippet, you'll see there we have those 3 terms. So whatever I enter here is what's going to be displayed in the drop down list. So that's how we control that. The next thing to take note of is that the control options query type, so query types speaks for itself, it's a query, and this is the query that is being referred to. So you'll see here, and then this links over into the next filter, which is the query run, and you'll see that when the selection is made, this query will then be run, and you'll see here that we have the results of a function here called run first query. And if you scroll down, you'll see that here I have the function for the run the first query. Then I have another function for running the second query, and another one for running the Fugiyard query. Now, to see how those are all linked, you'll see then that once again, if I select author 2, there's author 2, and that runs the second query. and if I select the third one, which is the search term, that will run that particular function. So to pull this all together, then there is the bricks query loop object, and that sets up the post data. So what we're saying here is if the query object type is equal to, and you remember that we did the query type right here in the control options, and we're saying if it's equal to by author 1, then fetch the post data set up the post data, and there we have author 2, and there we have the by search full BI. So that's pretty much basically how it works, and you just need to make sure that you have the right items coordinated. So you need to make sure that in this case by author 1 is the object type, which corresponds to that object type, which then corresponds also then to this object type. Once you have that in place, we need to tell it what function to access to get the query. And in this case, it was, I left it at run first query. But if I change the name of this function, then I must make sure that when I head over here to the function, that that function name is the same as that function name. Right, once you have your function set up, then you can pretty much create any argument you want as you would normally in WordPress. And in this case, we've said post type is post, order by the date, post per page, list all the posts, and we said author in. So in this one, we said author in, and of course that author ID is 1. Then we had the second query, and the second query is also for the author, and in this case it's author in, and this is author ID number 2. And in the last one we did a query by search term, and we've said, right, list all the posts that then have this search term in either the title or the content. And you'll see at the end of each argument you'll recognize the standard post query is equal to a new WP query based on those arguments. So the arguments here, you can pretty much set up your queries as normal, and then right at the end of the function we return the post query posts. So when you make your selection in the menu, it then refers to which function to run. The function then runs to get the posts, and then of course depending on what was selected, the post data is set up, and that post information is then available in the loop. And then you would set up your output pretty much the same as you would do it normally. So in this case, we've got post title. If I wanted to add the post author, it would just be a case of add, and let's go to post, and let's see, author, and I set up the post author, and there we would have the post author as normal. And if I save that, head over to the website, so whatever information is included in that post can now be accessed. And as you can see, we added the author, so there you see author number 2. If I go into my query now and I was to change that query, so I head over to the container, and now I'm going to go to author 1. So this will be to select the post by author number 1, and there you'll see all the posts by author 1 are displayed. And then also then if I do the search term, you will see that only the search term items are returned, and that works really well. Now the other thing that you can do with your snippet here is that when you look at your queries, you can also make reference to custom post fields or variables or other functions. So it's not only limited to what you can type in here. So for example, if I created an options page, and on that options page I was to have a custom field then for post for the author in, I could then set the author in on the options page, and of course here we would then simply just access that custom field value, and that field value would then be used to output the post information. So that would mean that you wouldn't necessarily have to come into your In this case, I'm using snippets, but if you had a function file in your theme, you wouldn't have to go into that file all the time to make the update. You could set it up on an options page. The only thing to be careful with there is the fact that anybody changing something there would then change the query globally. So wherever this particular query is run, the information is taken from that particular function. So any changes here would then affect the output globally. There's no setting here in this example where you can make a change and have a different output each time. So for example here, by being able to change the search term, for example, and then output a different search query. The way that this is set up at the moment is whatever is accessed here in these functions is output on the front end. So just a word of caution then to make sure that if you do give people access to make those changes or updates through an options page, that it would change that output globally. So you might want to choose when you give somebody access to that and when you'd like it, like nobody to have access to how that output is coded. So you have that choice, and it does allow for some flexibility. But the nice thing is that by using this method, you can create your own custom queries and then quite easily query by anything. So I hope you found that interesting. I hope that you can create your own queries. Thank you for watching.